Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about fucking legacy and stuff, and it's another BABL thing. I know this is like a long time in the making. I think the last one was like over a year ago. Just so much stuff going on usually, so figured I'd do this one while I had the time. Had a little bit of time today, and I was looking at like, oh, what new videos do I need to make? Trying to work on old, go through the old ones I wanted to make, because I got like a list. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, basically just a list of old stuff that's kind of queued up. And this is one of the ones I was gonna do. Probably next one will be like survival. Um, but yeah, this is a good one. This is a good one. More interesting cards are the ones that are like specific to certain archetypes or play styles or whatever, instead of just like this card is, let's unban Moxen because Moxen or whatever, good and stuff. Like, it's not interesting, right? Like, no one, boo, we don't want that. I mean, for a million different reasons, but obviously it's pretty uninteresting to build around it. I guess that would be the least pertinent reason. But, anyways, today we got Memory Jar, and Memory Jar this has been banned since the inception of Legacy, and this came out after. Well, the reason this was banned was because combo winter and saga block, and how that was a huge problem in standard, and then in extended and in vintage at the time. I mean, just crazy, 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 crazy stuff. I mean, like I said before, in my previous video about Mercadian masks, this was probably one of the things the closest to destroying the game. Chronicles was bad too, but like that wasn't. I mean, that was bad sort of in a different way. This just made like the games like very coin flippy. The power level of the cards is just, I mean they're like uncards. They're basically like not even real. Like, how is Tolarian Academy? How is fast mana on a land, and then you print 0 and 1 mana artifact? I mean, just how does that even? That doesn't doesn't compute, right? They obviously didn't test any of this stuff. Mm-mm. But yeah, Jar is at least currently the way things are working out today. We have a lot of the broken stuff banned. Obviously, Academy Academy is super hyper banned. No way that'll ever come off. Stuff like Manifold, yep, that's still banned too. Manifold's a pretty good card. We have Grid Monolith, of course, and stuff like Voltaic Key to produce fast mana, but that's obviously a little bit more fair, at least in the legacy sense of things. Um, So yeah, Jar's it's an interesting card. It requires a little bit of build around, but it does do some good stuff. It is kind of symmetrical, but let's just get into it. All right. So basically, what Memory Jar functions as is basically kind of like an instant speed, sometimes uh, draw 7. And these are typically, each player discards their hand and then draws 7 cards and da 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 da. In the case of Time Twister, you shuffle your graveyard into your library. In the case of Memory Jar, you actually set your hand aside, you exile it, and then you play your stuff, and then you have to discard the cards you drew and then return the other cards to your hand. So this is kind of an interesting card. Costs 5 colorless mana, so it's not the most expensive of the draw 7s. Time Spiral itself is a little more expensive, but it is a pretty sweet card. Um, and it being a permanent is a very unique thing. None of the other draw 7s off the top of my head, including the new ones they just printed in Modern Horizons, none of them are permanent. So we're really the deck that I made really wants to take advantage of that fact. So this is an interesting card, and the original deck that really got the Jar emergency banned really was played like all the fast mana and Memory Jar, and then Megrim. So when they discarded their hand, they would take a bunch of damage or whatever. Um, and so you just change ours until they kill themselves off of Megrim, which is, I mean, that's cool. Obviously, we'd be doing something a little bit day, depending on what you're doing if you're playing it in a storm deck. And this card, I didn't. The first place I didn't think of going to was Storm because at 5 mana, it's basically worse than Ad Nauseam because if you can play Ad Nauseam within the first couple turns, you're going to be drawing more than 7 cards unless you're very unlucky, very unlucky. Um, so yeah, it's a non-deterministic kill like Ad Nauseam. I mean, sure, you don't lose the life, but you draw far fewer cards than Ad Nauseam. And unlike something like Past in Flames, Past in Flames is basically a deterministic kill, and obviously you don't really get that with Memory Jar. So it would be interesting maybe to try and play it in a Storm deck, but I can't imagine it's like maybe a side grade or something. Like it's not that good. I mean, in that kind of deck, you'd have to change the deck quite a bit to really take full advantage of it, and it's probably just not good enough. I mean, sure, maybe something like we start playing more artifacts, stuff like Defense Grid, like TES, and maybe Goblin Welder starts to look more interesting. And I think that'd be cool. That'd be pretty sweet if the Storm decks kind of went that way, because that'd be awesome. But that's not what I want to focus on here. And the thing is, it doesn't really that doesn't scream broken to me. Like that's not gonna do it. This isn't Wheel of Fortune, right? Or Mind's Desire. So yeah, we'll just be sort of ignoring the storm stuff because you could probably write a bunch of things. And I mean, I'm not a storm expert. I've been playing storm since the mechanic debuted in Scourge. I remember playing Long Dock Deck back in the day. Being able to play like 4 Lion's High Diamond and in Vintage is that was a thing that was interesting with your 4 Burning Wish and then Wish and double LED. Oh man, you just wish for your so if you could wish for your Yawgmoth's Will with your off your 4 wishes and LEDs, and then you just like get an obscene amount of mana, or or against some board states you'd be like, oh, I guess I'll wish for my balance or whatever, which is just, I mean, again, another crazy card, also really insane with Lion's Eye Diamond. But yeah, anyways, digressed, total digression. But there's other decks, of course. You could play it in Nick Fit, I guess. So that was kind of the first thing. I'm like, okay, what's a really big deck, or really big deck, a big mana deck in Legacy? And Nick, I mean, it's kind of a meme. Like, you can play anything in Nick Fit. Like, Carnage Tyrant? Hell yeah, dude, it's Carnage Tyrant time. Like, let's play Carnage Tyrant in Nick Fit, Which is, I mean, obviously it's very good because it's 6 mana. It's basically impossible to kill. So that's sweet. And Nick Fit also, thins its deck out of basic lands, so you get even better draws off Memory Jar. It probably wouldn't be something the deck would be based around, but it would be kind of sweet, right? So, yeah, it's an option to play something like Jar in Nick Fit. That might be interesting. Again, not something that would be like, you wouldn't really break it or create anything new, but it could go there. I mean, honestly, because Jar is a colorless card, it can, kind of go anywhere. But being 5 mana is a pretty big handicap, and it makes it difficult to slot into certain decks. But if you can pay for it, I mean, it's gangbusters, baby. That's a lot of cards for free, and then you can use it at instant speed too after you play it, so you can sort of queue it up, and the next turn you can pop it, sort of like a heroic strike, right? And you pop all your cooldowns. And maybe I'm dating myself. I guess that was a long time ago, but anyways, yeah. And so the idea is that like this is a really strong card, this is a really powerful card, but at 5 mana, I mean, you're basically like this has got to win the game, right? Like even 4 mana cards, kind of the same thing. You have stuff like Sneak Attack and Natural Order, or even like a Jace unanswered will win the game. So you have to, these expensive cards have to really give you a lot of value, put you in a dominating board position, and Jar kind of does that, but obviously the format's so hostile to expensive cards. that it's good to have really big, expensive cards to build around. But I'm spending so much time just talking about it. I can go on like this forever. So let's go ahead and look at the deck that I was playing with. Okay, so we got all sorts of good stuff here. Um, so we got Goblin Welder, Metal Worker. Now these are kind of the basis because I'm thinking like, man, I want this memory jar to do memory jar stuff. Um, I want to recur it. I want to like get a bunch of mana off it, and Metal Worker is one of the best ways to really abuse jar because you can play it and then tap it and then draw a bunch of cards, and that when you draw a bunch of extra cards, obviously it turns your Metal Worker back on. And with Welder, you can weld jars into play and get rid of random crappy artifacts and stuff like that. And so you do a lot of really sweet stuff. Obviously, Goblin Welder does all sorts of other tricks with like Sundering Titan or Wormcoil Engine, stuff like that. Then we got Lodestone Golem. It's just another powerful early play to sort of kind of like a Thalia, one-sided Thalia. Simming Spear Guide is more ramp. Platinum Empyrean is just again another high-end like card to tutor from Koldotha Forge Master. Forge Master to fetch up all your one-ofs and stuff. Karn, because this is a deck that plays a lot of artifacts, and so that's good. And then for like artifacts, we have disruptive stuff like Chalice and Trinisphere and Crucible. Crucible, of course, makes me want to play some number of Wastelands in here, but I don't have any at the moment in the deck, I should say, because it almost feels like that might not be really where you want to go. Obviously, yeah, so Crucible is good with Wasteland, but just being able to play Great Furnace every turn and weld it out for like other stuff is pretty sweet too. Monolith Key for more mana ramp, of course, and the lands are all again nothing too interesting here. Tomb, City Traders, Cavern. Cavern, of course, being very good. Cavern on Goblin lets you play your Welder through Chalice and 1, which came up a lot of times. So if you can't drop your Welder before your Chalice on 1, that's pretty sweet. That's really nice. Really great interaction. Of course, Mountains to cast your Goblin Welders, and I guess if any other red sideboard cards. And then Ventress Fair and Buried Ruin, more card selection, card tutoring, that kind of thing. Again, both are good with Crucible of Worlds. And so in the sideboard, as you see, it's kind of up in the air. I don't have anything in there really, but there's a bunch of stuff I probably would play. There's, again, the typical Karn artifacts. So you'll want Mycosynth Lattice, Tormod's Crypt, Welding Jar, Walking Ballista, maybe Wormcoil, another Trinisphere. That's like 6 cards. Another 4 would probably be like Leyline of the Void. Ensnaring Bridge is another good tutor target. So, I mean, you have all sorts of things you can play. I mean, since you're playing red, you can also play stuff like Blood Moon. There's a ton of different stuff, but it would be hard to sort of say what you'd put in the sideboard outside of some of the stuff that's kind of already sort of spoken for, so to speak, just because of what you're playing. But yeah. So I actually play this deck a bunch, and it's pretty fun. I mean, you can just kind of go off with Jar. Obviously, you have a Jar in the board that you can Karn for, which is really sweet. So, like, you can do all sorts of really cool stuff. But this isn't the only way, the direction to take this deck. And let's talk a little bit more about that, actually. So, Forge Master is obviously a very good card, but it's also an extremely slow card. So, that's not exactly the best place to be. 5 mana, kind of do nothing until you untap is maybe a little too slow. And I was thinking maybe there should be more of a stacks-esque style approach. I wonder, maybe even what exactly you could do. So obviously stuff like Tanglewire and Smokestack. Tanglewire more than anything because it's so powerful, and it's such a great card to roll out with Goblin Welder. And you can tap all sorts of random stuff like chalices and well, I guess if you played Smokestack, you could tap Smokestack too and random crap. especially since most other decks aren't super land heavy. Um, there's all sorts of things. Of course, since you're playing Chalice, stuff like Sorcerer's Spyglass would be a good one. Again, turns off all sorts of problematic planeswalkers, which is great. Um, do all sorts of sweet things with that guy, and of course that Spyglass taps really nicely for Tangle Wire as well. Like I said, Smokestack's very good, but it's very slow, so you'd have to be like a super dedicated um, like stack style deck, and maybe that's the best way to take it. I'm not 100% sure. Um, Stacks is pretty sweet. It's not really been an archetype that's really been that good in Legacy ever. Um, and then there's stuff like Bridge too. Bridge again, another good card, and get empty your hand pretty fast. But obviously there's a little bit of dyssynergy with Memory Jar, of course. And I'm feeling like maybe I want to play more guys. Maybe max out on Lodestone Golems or something, or maybe especially if I'm playing like stacks, probably want to play something like Karn. Karn obviously can um, turn all of my random dudes and artifacts and stuff into beaters, like the Karn the Great Creator. But Karn Great Creator can only do it one at a time, whereas Karn Silver Golem will be a clock itself and turn other stuff into beat sticks too, which is pretty sweet. Um, and of course, maybe more ramp might be good. Something like Thran Dynamo is pretty sweet. He's playing some other artifact-based decks, so that might be something to do, something to look out for. So yeah, all sorts of options. So it's hard to say what exactly would be the best way to go, but the deck I was playing was pretty fun, pretty sweet. You could do a lot of stuff. You don't really get to move a ton of cards around with these kinds of decks, typically. Not typically. But there are other decks that could, recently, of course. So I made this Karn deck a little while ago, but there's all these other things that came out too. So like the Mystic Forge decks, that would be pretty sweet. So these are basically just like Karn is your only win condition, and then you just spam through your deck until you get a bunch of artifacts and stuff like that, and you know uh, you have all sorts of like infinite combos basically. Um, Obviously, the Karn Lattice thing, Paradox Engine plus Mystic Forge is pretty sweet. That'll let you just pretty much play your entire library. And then you have Walking Ballista. Walking Ballista is sweet once you generate like, was it 40 mana? 40? Yeah, that'll let you one-shot someone with Ballista. That's pretty cool. And of course, you have the Karn Lattice thing. Oh, I think I already said the Karn Lattice thing. The Karn Scion of Urza, though, is a good option in the sideboard that we have here. Because, well, it's another source of card advantage. Makes dudes, so you can beat down. Pretty sweet. This is a cool deck, and this would obviously probably benefit from Jar. One on the board, three main deck. Where you would put them, I'm not 100% sure. But obviously be pretty good here. Pretty good here. At least as a one of to get with Karn. That'd be awesome. But there's even more. Okay, so this is basically like a typical 12 post style deck. Um, and it's nothing too wonky here. You get the 1x Ballista main, 2 Ulamog, 4 Thought-Knot. The only thing stuff really changes is the 2 Awless Dust. Oftentimes these kind of decks don't always play the Awless Dust. They're a little clunky, of course, but they're obviously excellent board wipes, so it's, can't really crap on them too much. But you can take out the 2 Wallace Dust and maybe a Spyglass or Trinisphere or something, or maybe a Thran Dynamo, something like that, and put the jar, 3 jars in, and then one on the board. This would be good because these Cloud Post tests can produce like a whole bunch of mana, obviously due to Cloud Post, Glimmer Post, and Vesuva, as well as you have your tombs and cities and stuff like that. So yeah, that'd be pretty sweet, pretty sweet. And another really nice interaction is Ugin plus Jar lets you just dump your hand, which is awesome, super sweet. I really like the Ugin the Ineffable plus Jar, so that's a really cool interaction. I didn't even think about until very recently, so I didn't get to test it out, but it does seem pretty sweet, pretty powerful. I like that. I like that. But that's not all. Oh my gosh, there's even more decks. Okay, so this is a deck that Pleasant Kenobi played, and I can't remember if he made the deck or not, or someone else or whatever. And this is basically like a deck that abuses LED plus Echo of Aeons plus Karn plus Narset to basically. So if you cast Echo of Aeons with Narset in play, your Narset will prevent them, your opponent, from drawing more than one card, which is awesome. So it's like a kind of a mind twist thing, and then you refill your hand because you can dump your hand really fast, and also with LED. Um, and then you have Daze and Force against a lot of the faster combo if you're on the draw and you can't play like Chalice or something. So that's sweet. And then of course you have Karn. So this might be a deck that would want something like a Jar in it too, because you have a bunch of fast mana, and obviously Jar works pretty well with Narset, so that's cool. Um, might be worth playing one or two main deck or sideboard. So that would be something to think about. So that even in this deck, you can put Jar in. So there's a lot of different options. They're all kind of like ramp decks, tomb decks, post decks, or whatever. But there's a lot of different things you can do, and can do all sorts of different things. And I guess at the end of the day, if you need to kill someone, you can you can turn your memory jar into a 5/5 with Karn. So that's kind of cool, right? Yeah. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different options to do with it. But whenever I was playing with the card, it didn't feel like that broken because there's a lot of ways to deal with it. Of course, Daze, Pierce, Force, opposing Karns, Spyglass, Pithing Needle. Um, I guess, well, nah, they're not really vulnerable to artifact destruction, since a lot of times if you'll play it, you'll just pop it immediately. So something like Assassin's Trophy is not that great against it, right? And of course, the sort of Metalworker Mud ramp style deck I was playing, not artifact destruction wouldn't be a big deal because you can always recur it with Welder or Buried Ruin or something. Um, yeah, so it's an interesting card. It's a fun card, but it definitely didn't feel like over the line. It was pretty sweet though. It's been a while since I really played with Jar. It's a little dirty, a little clunky, but it feels pretty good. And these colorless style decks didn't really ever get like a lot of good card draw before. And since it's basically one-sided too, that makes it even better, And there's just all sorts of things you can do with it. I think this would actually be a really sweet card to unban. The power level is definitely like at a level where it's like not like oppressive. It would power up and um, make more interesting sort of different styles of tomb based decks or cloud post based decks or whatnot. So that's really cool. It'll do all sorts of interesting things, I think, and which is more than you say for a lot of the other cards on the ban list. But yeah, if it was just not reserved, that'd be nice. But I mean, it is what it is, right? Um, last time I checked, I think it was like 25 bucks. So I mean, that would be kind of crappy if it got unbanned. It'd probably shoot up super high. I mean, look at Grim Monolith. It's like 120, 130 bucks. Ew, don't remind me. But yeah, all sorts of things to do with this guy. It's pretty cool, pretty cool. I like it a lot. So, anyways, so that's it for today, guys. I hope you had fun. I hope you're happy. I hope you realized how much fun you had being a magician, how much fun it could be. Thanks for stopping by. Hopefully, I'll get some more babbles out there. Because I like to babble. All I ever do really is babble. So, thanks for stopping by, guys. Have a great day.